Death Battle is a series found on the idea of pitting two popular characters against each other and seeing who wins. This, in turn, means that almost from the beginning, you were going to have a matchup where people disagree with the outcome no matter what happens. And that, in turn, leads to their very long history of people accusing them of being biased, or only making the winner whoever will get more views. However, this made me think of how many times Death Battle gets in hot water for a verdict that's honestly pretty reasonable to assume. This all stems from a myriad of reasons, but first I want to talk about something kind of funny that I've noticed that doesn't matter. And that's how many people use information that was released after the episode came out to debunk the episode. This is obviously stupid, but there's a unbelievable amount of times you'll see someone's reasoning for a character winning an old episode be due to something that a sequel game or series, or even just a guidebook that wasn't printed yet says. Episodes like Dante vs. Bayo and Eggman vs. Wily are absolutely incorrect nowadays, but the crew themselves have said things like how on earth were they supposed to predict the existence of Sage? These are obviously episodes that people shouldn't really take a mark against their credibility. If you think Bayo won before Bayonetta 3, hey, that's cool. I would love to see arguments for that because I've actually heard that recently more than I did back then. But if your argument boils down to, oh, well, they should have included X thing that was in a guidebook that came out 2 months later, I'm sorry, that's just really funny. But onto the main topic, what I wanted to talk about mostly were episodes that are widely considered wrong, and not for the reason that the math is wrong, or because X character was given an ability, resistance, item, whatever that they probably shouldn't have. It's due to the fact that a huge amount of people seem to have this belief that Death Battle has like some sort of hatred towards series they put on the show. Sonic, Dragon Ball, DC, Marvel, Naruto, Pokemon, Bleach. The list goes on, as literally all of these franchises had left with the same thing being said about them. Well, Death Battle was clearly biased against them or for them, that's why this character lost. This is so prominent in the culture of power scaling that as far back as Goku vs. Superman in the big 2012, people were saying they were biased against Dragon Ball because they had the second Dragon Ball character on the show lose. People can look at an episode that is correct at quite literally everything it does and overflowing with their love and adoration for each character in series and still say that Death Battle's biased against that character. Episodes like Goku vs. Superman 3, Bill vs. Discord, and Dio vs. Alucard are some of the biggest examples of episodes where you can tell that the crew has such a deep love for each character and it's expressed well in the fight and analysis. And I've seen all three of those get hit with the, well, they were clearly biased against this character because they hate them, especially towards Alucard and Discord, which is like blatantly not true. Whenever I think of biased Death Battle episodes and how insane people can be, the first episode that comes to mind is honestly Silver vs. Trunks, as this episode is commonly called biased against both characters, as Dragon Ball fans see this as Trunks getting shit on because he loses the fight, and that means Death Battle hates Dragon Ball. While Sonic fans will watch the rundown and feel like Death Battle actively hates Silver or Sonic as a whole because the entire rundown treats him kind of like a joke. This leads to a weird dilemma as both sides feel like the crew doesn't like them, but in my opinion, one side is absolutely more justified in this. The entire episode from the rundown to the conclusion is based on the idea that Trunks is the coolest character in fiction and that you should love him and be shocked that Silver can win this. This is clearly written because the writer loves Trunks and wanted to show his love for Trunks. This, I don't believe, is him spiting Silver, and I think the only time it veers a little too far is the conclusion where they're basically having to baby Dragon Ball fans into feeling less butthurt because Trunks lost. Hell, Silver winning is the unpopular opinion for that matchup, and nowadays people think Trunks handedly wins. I don't know, as I've not played Xeno or anything like that, and I've not read Archie, but this is just from what I've heard from people who deep dive both series. However, I want to mention that while some episodes do have a bias towards one character, as I mentioned, this is not due to disliking the series or forcing that character to lose to fit an agenda. For example, even if they despise Silver, even if every member of that team hates him, they've made 14 Sonic episodes, and the majority of them have the Sonic character win. And half the crew have said Sonic is one of their favorite series of all time, or the favorite series of all time. Ben Singer literally owns most of Archie Sonic, and every time they talk about Sonic on cast, he has the biggest damn smile on his face, because that series means the world to him, especially Archie. If you want to see more about this topic, go watch Pumpkin Swift's video on Death Battle's track record with Sonic. She goes over both the franchise as a whole, and how Death Battle has shown that they love the series throughout all the years. I just think that sometimes when they're writing a script, they let their preferences towards one of the characters show, and it can feel like they're being a bit biased against the other one, even if it's probably just accidental. Unless it's for like Super Friends Aquaman, but that's clearly a joke, so who cares? There's a quote from Liam I want to bring up where he says,
why we're such biased Naruto fanboys.
He's the most popular character, Liam. We were just talking about
I love how
that.
when the more popular character wins, we're having them win because they're more popular. But when the less popular character wins, we're having them win because it'll inspire the most rage, which will then get the most clicks. It's almost as if there's no way to win. Yep, for us.
We
yes,
can't.
we can't win.
and I think he's 100% right. If you think they pick who the winner is, depending on who'd get most views, I would love to direct you to Voltron vs. Power Rangers, which would have done infinitely better if the Rangers won. The most frustrating thing is how the community seems to not understand that in power scaling, you can have multiple verdicts and not be completely incorrect. That's why most blogs are not 19-0 sweeps. I've personally worked on about 4 blogs, and unless it was an insane stomp, none of them had a full sweep. And especially when a blog is made by 2 to 3 people, having a small number of votes means that the less popular of the two sometimes wins, even if it's not the common consensus. So, expecting matchups as complex as Bowser Eggman or even Madara Aizen to have the same opinion as you is setting yourself up for failure. The fun of power scaling is literally derived from debating 2 characters of similar-ish power and seeing who wins. In Death Battle, making the victor someone you agree with isn't key proof as bias. It just opens the door for you to go make a video or a blog going over the matchup yourselves and how you think it should go. This isn't even something unique to Death Battle, as other series like Smash Bracket and Fan Battle were called heavily biased as well. And now, I'm not going to get into whether they actually are or aren't biased. I'm just saying that that is literally the only thing you hear when they're brought up nowadays, and it's kind of sad to see because those videos have a lot of hard work put into them. I'm not a huge fan of either series. I've only seen maybe 2 episodes of each, maybe, but I can assure you that the animators who worked on any Versus show try their best, and the writers are doing their best, even if they make the wrong choices. And I cannot imagine how annoying it must be to open socials and constantly see people screaming about how they made X character lose. To this day, I still see people comment on Devil Artemis's post saying he should make Bardock win, as if he has anything to do with the verdict, despite the fact that he, and I'm pretty sure the entire Death Battle crew, probably like Bardock more than Nolan, and they didn't make him lose out of some hatred, and this is true for effectively every other Versus show. I think this way of trying to justify whoever wins is bias against your favorite series is effectively a coping mechanism that the Versus community has moved towards as the culture of debunking each and every new death battle has become commonplace. However, if those channels can't find a valid reason as to why a character wins, they boil their arguments down to, oh, well, Kyle should beat Simone, the death battle is biased against DC and won't let us win, while not even stating the main arguments as to why their character should win. You can say Kyle wins because of soul abilities or because of X scaling that they didn't bring up. I think that's valid. I think there's plenty of ways Kyle can win. But if your argument boils down to saying that they're biased against DC, I'm sorry, I'm not taking you seriously. It is nice that in recent years that type of complaint has subsided a lot, as the extreme high quality of recent episodes has made most people's responses be, oh well, I think Eggman wins, but it was still a nearly perfect episode, which is far more normal. Because if you think the 5 seconds of Eggman dying and the 2-minute conclusion ruined the entire 27-minute video of just peak fiction after peak fiction, then I'm sorry, you gotta get over it. You gotta move on. And since we're on topic, I do want to mention that I do not mindlessly agree with Death Battle's verdicts, as I actually do disagree with a couple of them. I'll show them on screen right now. This video is pretty much just meant for me to get out my annoyance on people who want Liam Swan's head on a spike because they had Ben 10 or Madara win. I think Death Battle is fully capable of choosing the wrong winner, but I'd rather argue about the research and show why I think that way, rather than screaming at the crew or the animators, because that literally will get you nowhere. The main message I want y'all to understand is that Death Battle can be and is wrong on a handful of episodes, but that doesn't mean they're secretly out to get your favorite character or despise the series they're covering. Maybe a member of the crew doesn't like a specific series because it's too gruesome or whatever, but I don't think that ever plays into the research or conclusion, and at most makes the episode's analysis feel a little lopsided, but that doesn't mean that the research is. But overall, I want to hear what you guys think, because I feel like the amount of people claiming Death Battle to be biased has dropped dramatically since the Kickstarter era began. Obviously, it still happens, but it's pretty much reserved to Bardock Omni-Man, Bowser Eggman, and Simone Kyle, truthfully, and many of the other matchups are either obvious stomps or people genuinely don't give a shit enough to argue about them. I'm sorry, Blade Buffy, but people gave up on arguing for you after 1 week. And as always, thanks for watching, and please make sure to go check out the Drunk Drafts podcast, because I'll be repping next week after this video comes out, one of my favorite characters ever. And be sure to go check out my Twitter for updates on when my next video come out, and thank you, and see you next time.